On the edge of known space, where stars grew thin and silence stretched like an endless ocean, sat the moon Varel 7. It was a cold, gray rock with no atmosphere and no life, except for the humans who lived inside a single dome-shaped base bolted to its surface. The base was small, barely more than a listening post, and its job was simple: watch the void, listen for signals, and report anything unusual. Most days nothing happened. Weeks passed with only the hum of machines and the soft beeps of monitors breaking the quiet. Eli Rourke was used to the boredom. He was the newest comms technician on the rotation, assigned to the graveyard shift because no one else wanted it. Every night from midnight to dawn ship time, he sat alone in the comms room, watching screens that rarely changed. His job was to monitor deep space static, background noise from distant stars and dead systems, and log any anomalies. It was dull work, but Eli didn't mind. He liked the quiet. It gave him time to think. That night started like any other. The base lights dimmed automatically. The air recyclers sighed softly in the walls. Eli sipped lukewarm synth coffee from a dented mug and ran a routine diagnostic on Relay Array 7, an old piece of equipment most people had forgotten about. It was outdated, prone to glitches, and scheduled for decommissioning next month, but Eli liked tinkering with it. There was something satisfying about coaxing life from broken things. As he adjusted the gain on the array's receiver, a sound cut through the usual hiss of cosmic noise. It wasn't random static. It was a pattern, steady, repeating, precise. 3 long pulses followed by 2 short ones, then silence. Then it repeated. Again. And again. Eli sat up straight. He checked the source. The signal was coming from Sector K9, near the asteroid belt that ringed the outer edge of the system. No human ships were logged there. No mining drones. No probes, nothing. He ran a quick scan. The signal wasn't on any known frequency. It didn't match military codes, civilian beacons, or even old emergency pings from lost freighters. It felt alien, but that was impossible. Officially, humanity had never made contact with intelligent life beyond Earth. Any rumors of first contact were dismissed as hoaxes or sensor errors. Still, Eli couldn't ignore it. He pulled up the decryption suite, feeding the signal through every protocol in the database. Nothing. The system labeled it unidentified noise and filed it under routine interference. But Eli knew better. This wasn't noise. It was a message. His fingers hovered over the alert button. Protocol demanded he report anything unusual immediately, but something stopped him. If he filed a report, Command would shut down the array, scrub the logs, and probably reassign him for overactive imagination. He'd heard stories. Technicians who saw patterns in static got labeled paranoid and shipped off to maintenance duty on ice mining outposts. Instead, Eli did something reckless. He copied the signal into a private folder, disguised it as a calibration test, and erased the original log entry. Then, heart-pounding, he played it back through his headset. The sound was clearer now. The pulses weren't just tones, they carried a strange resonance, almost like a voice trying to speak through static. He listened 3 times, memorizing the rhythm. On the 4th play, something changed. The signal stopped. For 3 full seconds, there was only silence. Then, a new sound emerged. Smooth, clear, and unmistakably human speech. It spoke in Standard Terran, the common language of Earth's colonies, with no accent, no distortion. "You hear me?" it said. "That is enough." Eli jerked back as if burned. He yanked off the headset and stared at the screen. The playback had ended. The array showed no outgoing transmission. He hadn't sent anything. He hadn't even touched the transmitter. He checked the security logs. No data had left his terminal. No external connection had been made. Yet somehow something out there had heard him listening and answered. His hands shook as he ran a full system scan. Nothing unusual. No breaches. No remote access. It was as if the voice had simply appeared inside the signal, like it had always been there waiting. He spent the next hour trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was a prank from another technician. Maybe it was a glitch in the old array, replaying some forgotten test message. But deep down he knew that wasn't true. The timing was too perfect. The words too specific. When his shift ended, he couldn't sleep. He lay in his narrow bunk, staring at the ceiling, replaying the voice in his head. "You hear me? That is enough." It hadn't sounded threatening. It sounded relieved. The next day, he acted normal. He ate in the mess hall, nodded at his coworkers, ran his diagnostics. But his mind kept drifting back to the signal. During his next shift, he checked the array again. The signal was gone. The sector was quiet. For 2 nights, nothing happened. Eli began to wonder if he'd imagined it all. Maybe stress. Maybe fatigue. Maybe the isolation was getting to him. Then, on the 3rd night, a new file appeared in his private folder. He hadn't created it. He hadn't downloaded anything. But there it was, a small data packet labeled for Eli. His breath caught. He opened it. Inside was a single audio file. He played it through his headset, bracing himself. This time the voice was softer, almost gentle. They watch your logs. They erase what they fear. Do not trust the silence. I am real, and I chose you because you listened when others would have turned away. The file ended. Eli sat frozen. How did it know his name? How did it know about the logs? Command did scrub unusual data, but that was classified. Only senior officers knew. A cold dread settled in his stomach. He wasn't just hearing a signal. He was being contacted, and whoever or whatever was out there knew more about the base than he did. He looked out the small viewport beside his station. The stars were bright, cold, and countless. Somewhere out there in the dark between the asteroids, something was watching, waiting, and it had broken every rule just to speak to him. Eli knew he should report it. He knew he should shut it all down. But a part of him, the part that had always believed there was more to the universe than what Command told them, refused to look away. He saved the new file, buried it deeper in the system, and whispered into the empty room, "I'm still listening." Outside, the void gave no answer. But for the first time in his life, Eli didn't feel alone. He felt seen, and that terrified him more than silence ever could. Eli tried to act normal after that night, but normal felt like a costume that no longer fit. He went through his shifts with careful precision, spoke only when spoken to, and avoided eye contact with the base commander, Major Voss. She had a sharp gaze and a habit of noticing things others missed. Eli worried she might see the truth in his face, that he was hiding something huge. At first, nothing changed. The base ran as it always had. Routine checks, meal rotations, system updates. But then, small things began to go wrong in ways that made no sense. The air vents in his quarters started hissing at odd hours, long after lights out, when the airflow should have been steady and silent. Not loud, just enough to wake him. Once, he followed the sound to a vent near the floor and found it slightly warm, as if something had passed through it recently. But the maintenance logs showed no work had been done there in weeks. Then came the food synthesizer. One morning, Eli walked into the mess hall to find a tray waiting for him at his usual seat. He hadn't ordered anything. Yet there it was, a protein bowl with extra greens, his favorite spice blend, and a cup of real tea, not the usual synth coffee. The system only served meals based on biometric scans and personal logs. No one else had access to his preferences. And no one on Varel 7 drank real tea. It was too expensive to ship this far. He ate it anyway. It tasted like home. The strangest thing happened during the weekly lockdown drill. All personnel were required to report to secure bunkers while the base ran a full systems test. Eli was in Bunker Gamma when he glanced out the reinforced viewport. The moon's surface stretched before him, lit by the distant sun, empty and still. Then he saw it. A figure stood near the edge of the landing pad, just beyond the floodlights. Tall, lean, wrapped in armor that shimmered like wet stone under starlight. It didn't move like a human. Its posture was too balanced, too still, and it was looking right at the bunker. Eli's breath caught. He turned to alert the others, but when he looked back, the figure was gone. He asked around after the drill ended. No one had seen anything. No EVA suits were logged as used. No external cameras had captured movement. The security feed from that sector showed only empty ground, but Eli knew what he saw. That night he returned to his bunk exhausted and uneasy. He stripped off his uniform and climbed into bed, hoping for sleep. Instead, he found something tucked beneath his pillow, a smooth palm-sized data chip cool to the touch. It wasn't issued by the base. It bore no markings. With trembling hands, he plugged it into his personal terminal. The screen flickered, then displayed images he hadn't seen in years. It was his childhood sketchbook, not a copy, not a scan. Every page was there. His drawings of flying cities, strange creatures with too many eyes, ships shaped like spirals. He'd made them when he was 10, back on Mars Colony 3 before his parents died in the reactor accident. He'd never shown them to anyone. He'd buried the book in a storage locker and never opened it again. Now every sketch was perfectly recreated on the screen. And on the last page, in fresh ink that hadn't been there before, were 3 lines of handwriting that matched his own. But he hadn't written them. They lied about the war. Meet me at the derelict. Come alone. Eli stared at the words until his eyes burned. His heart hammered against his ribs. This wasn't a trick. This wasn't a glitch. Someone or something knew him, knew his past, knew his secrets, and it was inviting him to break every rule he'd ever been taught. He spent the next 2 days in a daze. He barely ate. He jumped at every sound. He avoided the comms room, afraid the voice might speak again, but the silence was worse. It felt like waiting. Then during a routine systems check, he found a new message waiting in his private folder. Just one word. Soon. That night he made his decision. He waited until the base cycled into its lowest activity phase, just after midnight, when only 2 guards patrolled the outer corridors and the comms room was empty. He dressed in a standard maintenance jumpsuit, grabbed a toolkit he didn't need, and slipped out of his quarters. The hangar bay was quiet. Only one small skiff remained docked, a beat-up utility craft used for short-range repairs. It wasn't armed. It wasn't fast. But it could fly. Eli bypassed the launch authorization with a code he'd memorized weeks ago during a training exercise. The system beeped in protest, but he overrode it. The bay doors groaned open, revealing the black sky and the glittering belt of asteroids in the distance. He climbed aboard, hands steady now that he'd committed. The skiff's engines hummed to life. He guided it out slowly, avoiding the main sensors, then punched in coordinates for the derelict ship, the one from the original signal. As the moon shrank behind him, he glanced at the data chip in his pocket. He didn't know what waited for him out there. It could be a trap. It could be madness. But for the first time since arriving on Varel 7, he felt like he was doing something real. The skiff cut through the void, silent and small. Ahead, the derelict grew larger, a jagged silhouette against the stars, ancient and broken, yet somehow alive with purpose. Eli didn't see the fleet tracking his unauthorized departure. He didn't know that Major Voss had already flagged his missing biometric signature and ordered a pursuit drone launched. He only knew that he was going to meet the voice, and whatever waited on that ship, it had chosen him for a reason. The skiff's proximity alarm chimed softly as it neared the derelict's hull. Eli slowed the approach, searching for a docking point. The ship's surface was pitted with age, but one section glowed faintly, a circular hatch pulsing with soft blue light as if expecting him. He guided the skiff toward it. The hatch opened without sound. Inside, the air was still, warm, and strangely familiar, like the scent of old paper and rain. Eli stepped out of the skiff, boots clicking on the alien metal. The corridor ahead curved upward, defying gravity. The walls shimmered with veins of light that responded to his presence, brightening as he moved. He wasn't alone. From the shadows at the end of the hall, a figure emerged, tall, armored, face hidden behind a smooth, featureless mask. It raised one hand, not in threat but in greeting. Eli stopped. His breath fogged in the cool air. The figure tilted its head as if studying him. Then, without speaking, it turned and walked deeper into the ship. Eli hesitated only a second before following. Behind him, the hatch sealed shut. Far away on Varel 7, alarms began to blare. A red alert flashed across every terminal. Unauthorized vessel departure confirmed. Pursuit protocol activated, but Eli was already gone, and the derelict, silent for centuries, had finally found its witness. Inside the derelict ship, nothing behaved as it should. The floor tilted beneath Eli's boots, not downward but upward, as if gravity had decided to pull toward the ceiling. He stumbled, catching himself on a wall that felt warm and slightly soft like living skin. Light pulsed through the corridors in slow waves, blue and gold, guiding him forward without sound or command. The armored figure, Kyle, though Eli didn't know the name yet, moved ahead with quiet certainty. It never looked back, never spoke, yet Eli felt no fear, only a strange sense of being expected. They passed through chambers that twisted in impossible shapes. Rooms folded into themselves. Staircases spiraled into ceilings. Time itself seemed uncertain, Eli's wrist chronometer flickered, then stopped. He checked it twice, but the seconds refused to move. Finally, they reached a central chamber. It was circular, with walls made of smooth, glass-like material that showed shifting images. Stars being born, planets cracking open, civilizations rising and falling in silent flashes. In the center of the room floated a cluster of glowing crystals, each one humming with a low, steady tone. Kale stopped and turned. With slow, deliberate motion, it removed its helmet. Eli gasped. The face beneath was humanoid, but not human. Smooth gray skin, large dark eyes with no whites, and a mouth that barely moved when it spoke. Its voice was soft, layered, as if more than one person were speaking at once. "You came," it said. "That means you were ready." Eli swallowed. "Ready for what?" "To see the truth." Kale stepped toward the crystals. One drifted down, hovering just before Eli's chest. "Touch it," it said. "Do not fear." Eli hesitated, then reached out. His fingers brushed the surface. Instantly, the world vanished. He stood on a world of silver trees and twin suns. Beings like Kale walked in peace, building cities of light, sharing knowledge across galaxies. They called themselves the Curators. Their purpose was simple: find young minds, guide them, protect them until they could stand on their own. But not all agreed. A faction broke away, warriors who believed intelligence was a disease. They called themselves the Scourge. They saw new species not as children, but as threats. They burned worlds to ash, erased memories, and hunted the Curators like animals. The war lasted centuries. The Curators refused to fight with the same cruelty. They built shields, hid refugees, sent warnings. But the Scourge had no mercy. One by one, the Curator worlds fell. The last ship fled into the void, carrying only one survivor: Kale. Eli saw it all in flashes: burning cities, empty nurseries, data vaults shattered. He felt the grief as if it were his own. Then the vision shifted. Earth. Not the Earth of history books, but a hidden truth. Decades ago, a human probe had drifted into Scourge territory. It was destroyed, but not before sending back a signal. Earth's leaders intercepted it. They found Scourge tech among the wreckage, and instead of warning the colonies, they kept it secret. They began experiments. They tested Scourge weapons on rebel settlements, calling them security operations. They erased records. They silenced witnesses. They even built their own version of Scourge cleansing protocols, hidden under layers of bureaucracy. The Curators had tried to warn humanity. They sent peaceful signals, offers of alliance. But Earth's government labeled them hostile. They shot down Curator ships, called them invaders, and used the fear to justify more control. Kyle was the last hope. And he had chosen Eli, not because Eli was powerful, but because he had listened when no one else would. The vision faded. Eli staggered back, tears on his face. "Why me?" he whispered. "Because you did not look away," Kyle said. "Because you heard the signal and did not call it noise. That is rare." Before Eli could respond, a deep shudder ran through the ship. Red lights flared along the walls. A new sound filled the air, not alarm, but warning. Kale's eyes widened. "They found us." Outside, 3 human warships dropped out of warp, engines roaring. Their hulls bore the sharp insignia of Earth's outer defense fleet. They weren't here for rescue. They were here to erase Eli's comms badge, still active, crackled to life. Major Voss's voice cut through, cold and sharp. "Eli Rourke, you are in violation of Security Directive 9. Power down your vessel and prepare for boarding. Resistance will be met with force." Kale looked at Eli. "They will not take you alive. They cannot risk what you now know." "What do I do?" Eli asked, panic rising. "You choose," Kale said. "Return to them. Pretend you saw nothing. Live a quiet life, never speaking of this, or carry the truth beyond their reach." Another shudder. The ship groaned. A panel on the wall split open, revealing a small pod. Sleek, silver, built for one. "That is a memory seed," Kale said. "It holds everything: the war, the lies, the hope. If you take it, they will hunt you to the edge of space. But if you survive, you can wake others." Eli stared at the pod, then at the warships on the view screen. He thought of the tea on his tray, the sketchbook, the voice that said, "You hear me." This wasn't just about him anymore. "I'll take it," he said. Kyle nodded. "Then go, now." As Eli ran for the pod, the derelict shook again, harder this time. A blast from the lead warship struck the hull. Lights flickered. Alarms wailed in a language Eli didn't know. He climbed into the pod. It sealed around him with a soft hiss. Through the small window, he saw Kale standing in the center of the chamber, arms raised, facing the incoming boarding teams. The pod detached. It shot away from the derelict just as the first human soldiers breached the hull. Eli watched as the warships opened fire. Not to capture, to destroy. The derelict exploded in a silent burst of light, scattering debris across the void. Kale was gone, the pod's systems activated. A voice Kale's spoke one last time. They will call you traitor, but you are witness. Remember that. Then the pod jumped into warp, vanishing before the fleet could track it. Back on Varel 7, Command declared the incident closed. Unauthorized excursion ended in tragic accident, the report read. Technician Rourke presumed dead. But in a hidden cargo freighter drifting near the Kuiper Belt, a young man with a silver pod clutched to his chest opened his eyes. He wasn't dead, and he wasn't alone. The truth was with him now, and somewhere far away, the Scourge stirred in their hidden strongholds, sensing that the silence had finally been broken. The freighter smelled of oil, stale air, and old cargo. Eli sat in a cramped storage locker near the engine room, knees drawn to his chest, the silver memory seed resting on his lap like a sleeping bird. He hadn't slept in 2 days. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Kale standing in the burning chamber, calm as the warships tore the derelict apart. The freighter's captain, a grizzled woman named Dara with a cybernetic eye and a mouthful of sharp teeth, had found him drifting in the pod near a junkyard asteroid. She didn't ask questions. She just pulled him aboard, tossed him a blanket, and said, "You're dead to everyone out there. Act like it," Eli understood. To the fleet, to command, to every human in the sector, he was gone. Officially, he died in a comms array malfunction. Unofficially, if anyone knew he'd survived, they'd come for him. And they wouldn't bring handcuffs. They'd bring silence. He spent his days hidden, listening to ship chatter over stolen earpieces. News feeds called the Varel 7 incident a tragic systems failure. No mention of signals. No mention of alien ships. Just a junior tech who got careless and paid the price. But then, 3 nights ago, something changed. A coded alert slipped through civilian channels. Scourge activity detected near the Helios Rim. Not confirmed. Not official. Just a whisper. But Eli knew it wasn't a rumor. The Scourge were returning, and Earth's government was pretending not to see them. That's when he made his choice. He couldn't run forever. He couldn't let the truth rot inside him while the fleet kept lying, kept testing Scourge weapons on innocent colonies, kept preparing humanity to become just like the monsters they claimed to fight. He needed to speak. But how? He had no rank, no access, no allies, just a memory seed full of proof and a name no one would believe. Dara found him staring at the seed the next morning. She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "You're gonna get us both killed, boy," she said, not unkindly. "Maybe," Eli said, "but if I don't do this, more people will die, and they won't even know why." She studied him for a long moment. Then she sighed. "There's a relay station near Proxima Outpost. Civilian hub. Weak security. Strong signal. If you want to shout into the void, that's your best chance." Eli nodded. "How long to get there?" 2 days. If we don't get boarded, they didn't talk about it again. But that night, Dara rerouted their course. She didn't say why. She just did it. When they reached the Proxima relay station, it was smaller than Eli expected, a floating ring of metal and glass tethered to a mining platform. Civilian ships came and went. No military presence, just traders, haulers, and data runners. Dara dropped Eli off in a maintenance shuttle disguised as a coolant hauler. 1 hour, she said. "Then I leave. With or without you." Eli didn't argue. He climbed out, wearing a borrowed engineer's uniform, the memory seed hidden in a tool belt. He walked through the station like he belonged there, head down, hands steady. The main comms hub was on level 3. He'd studied the layout from old public schematics. Security was light, just biometric scanners and a single guard dozing at the desk. Eli used a stolen access chip Dara had given him. It opened the outer door. Inside, rows of terminals hummed softly, linked to every colony in the sector. This was it, the voice of humanity's frontier. He found an unused terminal in the back, plugged in the memory seed, and began uploading. The system resisted at first. Firewalls flared. Warnings popped up. But the seed wasn't just data, it was alive in a way. It bypassed protocols, rewrote permissions, and latched onto the central broadcast node. A progress bar appeared. 12%. 27%. 45%. Eli's hands trembled. He kept glancing at the door. Any second now, alarms would sound. Guards would come. But he couldn't stop at 68%. The station lights flickered. Then red emergency strobes flashed. A voice boomed over the intercom. Unauthorized data breach in comms hub. Lockdown initiated. Eli's heart stopped. He yanked the seed free, but it was too late. The upload had already synced. The truth was loose. Screens across the station lit up. Not just in the hub, in the mess hall, the docking bays, the crew quarters. Every display showed the same thing: curator archives, footage of scourge atrocities, Earth secret labs, burned colonies labeled as accidents, and Kale's final message: they lied about the war. People stopped, stared, whispered. Outside, a patrol ship changed course, heading straight for the station. Eli ran. He burst out of the hub, dodging confused workers sprinting for the shuttle bay. Alarms wailed. Doors slammed shut. He used the access chip again, overriding a service hatch, and dropped into a lower maintenance tunnel. Behind him, boots pounded on metal. He crawled through tight spaces, lungs burning, until he reached the outer airlock where Dara's shuttle waited. She was already in the cockpit, engines running. "Get in," she yelled. He leapt aboard just as armed security officers rounded the corner. Shots rang out, sparking off the hull. Dara slammed the throttle. The shuttle shot away from the station, weaving through cargo drones and supply lines. Inside, Eli slumped into the co-pilot seat, gasping. On the view screen, the relay station pulsed with light, every screen still broadcasting the truth. "It's done," he whispered. Dara didn't answer right away. She just flew, eyes on the stars. Finally, she said, "You just lit a fire in a powder room, kid." "I know," Eli said, "but someone had to strike the match." Back at the station, chaos spread. Colonists demanded answers. Fleet officers argued over comms. Some called Eli a hero. Others called him a terrorist. But no one could deny what they'd seen. Across the sector, ships began changing course. Not toward Earth, toward the Helios Rim, toward the Scourge. And deep in a hidden bunker on Luna Prime, Earth's High Command watched the broadcast with cold fury. They issued a new order: find Eli Rourke, terminate with extreme prejudice, deny all knowledge of Scourge contact. But the seed had been planted. As Dara's freighter jumped into warp, Eli looked out at the stars. He was hunted. He was alone. But he was no longer silent. Somewhere out there, others were waking up. And the real war, the one between truth and lies, had just begun. The freighter drifted in the shadow of a dead comet. Engines cold, lights off. Eli sat cross-legged on the floor of the cargo hold, the silver memory seed resting in his palms. It no longer glowed as brightly as before. Its energy was fading, its final task done. The truth had been sent. Now it was just a shell, beautiful, empty, and quiet. Dara had left him 2 days ago. Not because she didn't care, but because staying meant death. "They'll trace every ship that left Proxima," she'd said, tossing him a duffel bag with rations, a fake ID chip, and a small pistol. "Find a hole, stay low. And don't trust anyone who smiles too easy." He hadn't seen her since. The freighter's autopilot would take it on a random course, empty, to throw off trackers. Eli had slipped away in a stolen scout pod before the jump, landing on this frozen rock where no one would think to look. But he knew it wouldn't last. News from the outer colonies crackled through his patched-together receiver. The broadcast had spread faster than anyone expected. Entire mining outposts had gone dark, refusing orders from Earth Command. A fleet of civilian ships had formed near the Helios Rim, calling themselves the Awakened. They weren't soldiers. Just farmers, engineers, medics, people who'd seen the truth and refused to look away. Earth called them rebels, terrorists, liars, but more joined every day. Eli wanted to help them. But he couldn't, not yet. He was the spark, not the fire. If he showed himself now, Command would use him as proof that the whole movement was built on one man's delusion. They'd hunt him down, stage a confession, and bury the truth forever, so he waited. He spent his days scanning frequencies, listening to whispers between colonies, tracking scourge movements through coded civilian alerts. The scourge were coming, not in secret this time. Their ships had been spotted near 3 outer systems. They moved like ghosts, silent, fast, and merciless. And Earth's fleet? They weren't preparing to fight. They were preparing to negotiate. That's when Eli understood the final lie. Earth didn't want to destroy the scourge. They wanted to join them, trade secrets, share weapons, become partners in control. The scourge offered order. Earth offered obedience. Together they could crush any colony that resisted. The thought made Eli sick. He couldn't let it happen. One night, as he tuned his receiver to a long-range military band, he heard something strange. A repeating signal not from Earth, not from the scourge, but from deep space. 3 long pulses, 2 short ones. His breath caught. It was the same pattern from Varel 7. He adjusted the gain, heart pounding. The signal grew clearer. Then a voice, faint, layered, achingly familiar. "You were never cleared for contact," it said. "But you were always worthy." Eli's eyes filled with tears. It wasn't Kyle was gone, but the message. It felt like a farewell, or a blessing. The signal ended. He never heard it again. The next morning he made his decision. He couldn't hide forever. The awakened needed more than rumors. They needed proof that Earth was betraying them. And there was only one place that proof existed: the Central Archives on Luna Prime, Earth's moon fortress. It was the most secure data vault in human space. No one had ever broken in. No one had ever come out. But Eli had something no one else did. He still carried a fragment of the memory seed, just enough to interface with old curator tech. And deep in the archives, buried under layers of lies, was a backup of the original Scourge Earth treaty draft. If he could reach it, he could expose the deal before it was signed. It was suicide. But so was doing nothing. He spent a week preparing. He traded his pistol for passage on a supply hauler heading toward the inner system. He memorized guard rotations, ventilation maps, and emergency protocols. He practiced walking like a low-level clerk, speaking like a man who belonged. When the hauler docked at Luna Prime, he slipped off with the cargo crew, his fake ID chip warm in his pocket. No alarms sounded. No one looked twice. Inside the moon base, everything gleamed. White floors, soft lights, calm voices. It felt peaceful, safe, but Eli knew better. Beneath the calm was fear. And beneath the fear was control. He waited 3 days, watching, learning. Then, during a shift change, he accessed a maintenance tunnel that led to Sublevel 9, the archive core. The air grew colder as he descended. The walls hummed with hidden power. At the final door, he placed the memory fragment against the scanner. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the door slid open. Inside, rows of crystalline servers pulsed with stored history. He found the treaty file easily. It was marked Eyes Only High Command. He copied it onto a blank chip, hands steady despite the fear clawing at his chest. As he turned to leave, red lights flared. Unauthorized access detected, a calm voice announced. Containment protocol active, doors sealed. Alarms wailed. Boots echoed in the halls. Eli ran. He burst into the main corridor just as armored guards rounded the corner. He ducked into a service lift, jammed the controls, and shot upward. The lift stopped on level 3. He sprinted for the nearest airlock, his escape route, but someone was waiting. Major Voss stood there, pistol drawn, face hard as stone. "I knew you'd come back," she said. Eli froze. "You knew about the scourge," he said. All this time, she didn't deny it. "Some truths are too dangerous for the public, Rourke. Order requires sacrifice." "Sacrifice?" Eli spat. "You're selling us out." "Better to serve than to burn," she said, raising her weapon. But she didn't fire. Instead, she tossed him a data pad. "Take it, go, and pray they don't catch you." Eli stared at her. "Why?" "Because someone has to remember what we lost," she said quietly. "Now run." He didn't wait. He grabbed the pad, slammed the airlock controls, and launched himself into a waiting maintenance drone. Behind him, Voss turned to face the approaching guards. Buying him time, he didn't look back. Hours later, aboard a smuggler's ship heading for the Outer Rim, Eli sent the treaty file to every open channel he could find. To the awakened, to neutral colonies, to pirate nets and rebel hubs. The truth exploded across the sector like a supernova. Earth denied it, called it fake. But the evidence was too clear. Fleets began to fracture. Soldiers refused orders. Colonies declared independence. And far beyond the edge of human space, the scourge paused. Their human allies were crumbling. Their perfect plan was failing. Eli stood on the smuggler's bridge watching stars streak past. He was tired, hunted, alone, but not powerless. Somewhere out there, people were fighting because of what he'd done, because he'd listened when no one else would. He touched the empty memory seed in his pocket. "You hear me?" he whispered to the dark. "That is enough." And for the first time since Varel 7, he believed it.